What would you do if you found it? If you discovered a folded letter covered in dust beneath a fallen wall, would you try to deliver it to its owner, or would you slip it into your pocket and walk away, thinking it's already too late? My name is Doctor Mila Kovalenko. That morning, through the gray smoke of a broken city, I found such a letter and learned that sometimes a piece of paper can weigh as much as a human life. Introduction. The wind whispered through the ruins like a faint sigh. Windows that once echoed with laughter now opened only to emptiness. Daylight crept shyly through the smoke, spreading a translucent shroud across the city. Each step I took over broken glass made a fragile rhythm. Tick, tick, tick. The zipper of my medical bag hung half open. Inside were bandages, sterile gauze, a few bottles of water. Simple things. Yet sometimes the simplest things carry the greatest hope. At the base of a shattered wall, I noticed a pale piece of fabric peeking from the debris. I knelt down, lifted it gently, and a small envelope slipped free. It was dusty, its corners curled, but one word remained clear on the surface. To Mother. Something stirred inside me. If you were there, would you open it, or look for who wrote it? Tell me in the comments. I chose the second. I turned the envelope in my hands. The rustle of paper in that silence felt almost like a heartbeat. Inside was a half-finished letter, written in shaky yet warm handwriting. Mom, don't worry. I'm still trying to remember how to stay human here. When I return, make me that same old tea. We'll have so much to talk about. No name, no date, just that word. Mom. And it tied a knot in my chest. I whispered, "Who wrote you?" The wind answered by brushing the letter's edge, as if the paper itself breathed. I didn't pocket it. Instead, I slid it into a clear plastic folder inside my bag and sealed it carefully. Then I looked around. A narrow street, half collapsed. At the corner stood a leaning telephone pole, its wires reaching to the sky like trembling fingers. There had to be a shelter nearby. If I wanted to return this letter, I needed a trace, a clue. At the end of the street, a half-open doorway caught my eye. Inside, a few people huddled between the stairs. My voice soft, my steps steady, I said, "Hello, I'm Dr. Mila. Can I help?" A woman's eyes met mine, tired, yet holding a fragile thread of patience. "The children," she murmured, "they're scared." I crouched beside them, offered a few calming words, gave water. When their breathing steadied, I asked, almost in passing, "Have you heard about a letter? One written to Mother?" She shook her head, then paused. "There used to be a postman down this street," she said quietly. "Maybe he'd know." The postman's house stood at the far end. The door was cracked open. A faint smell of smoke lingered. Inside, shelves once arranged with perfect order, letters, address books, rubber stamps. On one note I saw the faint label, incoming/outgoing below it, scribbled arrows, names half finished. One caught my eye. Koval. My heartbeat quickened. A coincidence, surely. Then I found a photograph, a kitchen table, a teapot, a smiling woman, a young man with a hand on her shoulder. On the back, written in fading ink, "Don't let the tea get cold. I'll be home soon." That was the moment I realized this letter wasn't just paper. It was a fragment of hope, a voice saying, "Don't forget me." If you were in my place, would you follow that voice? I did. Between the shelter and the medical station, there was a single path, a narrow lifeline through the ruins. At the intersection stood a small message board, covered with notes. The missing, the found, the unknown. I pinned a new note, looking for the sender of a letter that begins, "Mom, don't worry. If this is yours, find me. Field Station 3, this afternoon." It felt like throwing a bottle into the sea, but sometimes the sea returns the message. As I walked away, a radio in the corner played faint music. A young girl tapped her fingers to the rhythm. When our eyes met, she smiled. "One day," she said, "every voice will find its way back." Maybe she was talking to the air, or maybe to me, and I thought, Perhaps letters are invisible strings that connect hearts still beating in the dark. When I reached the field station, a few volunteers greeted me. "Mila, take a break," one said. I smiled. "Rest will find me later." I placed the letter in a locked drawer and sat by the window. The light rested softly on the sill, thin, patient, alive. Later that day, someone arrived asking about my note. A middle-aged man, short, neat, exhausted. "I used to help at the post office," he said. "I sorted letters." "The one you mentioned, a letter to a mother. A boy brought it in. He didn't give his name, just said, 'Please make sure this reaches her.' Then, he never came back." I asked quietly, "Do you know who the mother was?" The man hesitated, eyes searching memory. There was no address. But the boy drew a small lilac flower. He said, "My mother loves lilacs." Lilacs. In this city, they grew by the riverbank, the only place the bombs hadn't silenced completely. I knew where I needed to go. By evening, I reached the river. The sun slid between clouds, stretching across the water in a faint golden line. As I walked closer, ruins gave way to grass, and there, among the stones, small purple lilacs bloomed stubbornly. On a bench sat an old woman holding a white handkerchief embroidered with tiny flowers. I sat beside her without speaking. The wind brushed my hair back. The water whispered, "Do you come here often?" I asked. "Every day," she said softly, "in case I hear a voice or news." Silence hung between us. Then I said, "I have a letter. It begins with Mom." Her fingers clenched the edge of the handkerchief. She didn't say the words, "That's me," but her eyes did. I took the letter from my bag, sealed in a clean folder, and placed it in her trembling hands. Time paused beside us like a quiet animal. She unfolded the paper slowly, lips tracing the lines as if reading prayers. Her whisper quivered. Tears rolled down, not in grief, but in recognition, the sound of a voice returning home. "He always said, 'We'll talk among the lilacs,'" she murmured. I said nothing. Sometimes the truest words are silence. After a long pause, she folded the letter against her heart. "Who are you?" she asked. "Dr. Mila," I replied, "someone who tries to deliver stories where they belong." She smiled, weary but kind. "Then let me give you another story," she said. "He used to carry a small tea bag with him. Said, 'When I return, we'll drink it together.' This was mine. Put it beside the letter. She handed me the tea bag. I placed it gently next to the paper inside its folder. Tell me, can a cup of tea wait a lifetime? Perhaps it can, because some forms of waiting are what teach us to live. On my way back to the station, a melody lingered in my mind, perhaps from the radio or perhaps the echo of that letter now complete. In my hands, I carried two relics, a letter and a tea bag. At the station, I laid a clean cloth on the desk and placed them side by side. A young volunteer looked over. "What's that?" I smiled. "A meeting that will happen someday, and proof that a voice reached home." That night, I wanted to write in my journal, but when I lifted the pen, the words belonged more to her than to me. "When the city burned, you found a voice that said, 'Don't worry.' And to return it, you walked a path not on any map, guided by the heart as your compass." I looked out the window. The sky was clearing. One by one, the stars stepped forward, shy but certain. Peace, quiet, soft as a breath, filled the room. If you've listened this far, who would you deliver that letter to? Write it down, maybe somewhere. Someone is waiting for your answer. The next morning, I returned to the riverbank. Among the lilacs, I slid a note beneath a stone. The letter has reached home. The tea will brew when the time is right. DM. As I walked back, a young boy stood at the entrance to the station, holding a tiny ink bottle. He looked around carefully, not afraid, just curious. "I want to learn how to write letters," he said, "so one day I can deliver them too." I smiled and handed him a blank page. "Start with this sentence," I said. "Don't worry." Because sometimes an entire city's rebirth depends on just those two words. That evening, I added one final line to my journal. Today, a letter found its home. And I realized, healing isn't only about tending to wounds, sometimes it's about carrying voices to the right hearts. Outside, the wind had stilled, and in the quiet, from somewhere among the lilacs, I heard a whisper. Don't let the tea get cold. We'll have so much to talk about. I am Doctor Mila. My story isn't over because every letter knocks on another door, and I'll keep knocking. If this story touched you, stay with me for the next one. Some voices are louder when we listen together.